First of all, it was October, a rare month for boys. Not that all months aren't rare, but there be bad and good, as the pirates say. Take September, a bad month, school begins. Consider August a good month, school hasn't begun yet. July's really fine. There's no chance in the world for school in June, no doubting that June's best of all, for the school doors spring wide and September's a billion years away. But you take October, school's been a month long, and you're riding easier in the range, jogging along. You got time to think of the garbage you'll dump in Old Man Pritchett's porch, or the hairy ape costume you'll wear to the YMCA the last night of the month. And if it's around October 20th and everything's smoky smelling, and the sky orange and ash gray with twilight, it seems Halloween will never come in a fall of broomsticks and a soft flap of bed sheets around corners. But one strange, wild, dark, long year, Halloween came early. One year, Halloween came on October 24th, 3 hours after midnight. At that time, James Nightshade of 97 Oak Street was 13 years, 11 months, 23 days old. Next door, William Holloway was 13 years, 11 months, and 24 days old. Both touched toward 14. It almost trembled in their hands. But that was the October week, when they grew up overnight and were never so young anymore. Hello, and welcome to the final Horror Month episode of Torn Book Club. I am your host, Josh, also known as Sarumann, and I was supposed to have a guest here with us today, but she has not Skyped in yet, so hopefully she will Skype in at some point during the show. That was a little dramatic reading from the prologue of our book of the month, which is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Excuse me, I've still got a bit of a cough and a little bit of a scratchy voice, and I'm sorry that we weren't able to do a show last week. I was really pretty sick, and excuse me, it would have been just me with a very raspy voice and coughing almost constantly, and that would have been just annoying for everybody, and I also would have been greatly out of it and kind of woozy, so that's why we didn't do an episode last week. And I do apologize for that. I'm the only one really running the show, so when I get sick, the show doesn't happen. But this week I am recovering. My voice is a little scratchy still, but doing much better. No longer having the 3 a.m. coughing fits, so that's good. Jan is asking, are we going to talk about The Hobbit Extended on the show or only on Torn Tuesday? Well, I haven't watched The Hobbit Extended Edition yet, The Desolation of Smaug, because I'm waiting for the Blu-ray. I haven't gotten the digital download, so I haven't actually watched it yet. But if our guest, Rebecca, comes in, she actually wrote a very detailed breakdown of all the new stuff for on Torn, and maybe she can talk a little bit about that. But mostly that's going to be on Torn Tuesday, and we're also going to be doing a panel at Kamikaze Expo. I'm going to be on that next weekend, where we'll be discussing the Battle of the Five Armies and what we can expect in December. Excuse me. And that's actually going to be our very last panel discussing the Battle of the Five Armies before the movie comes out. So I don't know if we'll be live casting that. Hopefully we will. Okay, I Stole the One Ring, and Ava and everybody are saying, can we please not talk about the Hobbit Extended Edition? We haven't gotten the DVD yet. Yeah, I'm with you. I haven't watched the digital download, just the I'm just waiting for the Blu-ray, which I think comes out beginning of November, so not this coming week, but next week. Um, and so that's so we'll wait till then. I have some idea of some of the stuff that's in there, but I'm not going to talk about it. What's Jan saying? No spoilers, but there's a great little extra on what we can expect on Battle of the Five Armies in the extras. Looks amazing. Yep, that I have heard about, and no, I'm not going to talk about that too much. Um, so, of course, this is Torn Book Club, so we should be discussing books and our book of the month, which is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Uh, I don't know how many of you remember the movie based on this from 1983, but it's one of my childhood favorite movies, and I read the book shortly after watching the movie, fell in love with it, went back and read it again for this month. So I'm all refreshed with it, um, and I don't know how many of you out there have read Something Wicked This Way Comes yet, or are waiting to hear what I have to say about it, but I will try to keep spoilers to a minimum, but of course we have to discuss the plot at some point. Um, Rovandier is saying you haven't been able to find the book. Um, it's available on Amazon. The Kindle version I think is only about $6. Um, it finding it in finding it in a library, that might be another thing. All depends on excuse me. It all depends on your library. But yeah, you should be able to find it on Amazon pretty easily. So so the basic premise of this book is uh, okay, no Kindle. Well, if you don't have a Kindle, you can still order the physical copy. Uh, there might be copies at a local bookstore depending on how big it is. Um, okay, so Rovandier doesn't have. They don't have Kindles in Denmark. That's interesting. And Ava is still reading the book, so I'll try not to spoil the ending, um, except to say that the ending in the movie and the ending in the book are rather different. Um, so the main premise of Something Wicked This Way Comes is it's a dark carnival story. Um, it takes place in a town called Greentown. In what was the year again? I just read it out loud. Um, I don't know. He doesn't say the specific year, but it was 1930-ish, 30 something. Um, excuse me. So yeah, there we go. Um, it takes place in a sleepy small town, and it focuses on two characters, um, Will Holloway and Jim Nightshade, who are both 14-year-old boys born an hour apart, grew up together, are best friends, and very symbolically, Will is the blonde-haired kid, Jim is the dark-haired kid. So they're kind of like a yin and yang, light and dark combination. So everybody's talking about Kindle stuff in the chat. Um, so Ravander is saying that will be the first Friday, if anything, no money. You can download the Kindle app to your phone or tablet. Um, and Rovandier is saying, don't have a smartphone. So yeah, it sounds like a download or Kindle is kind of out of the question for Rovandier. So yeah, I would suggest finding a hard copy. If you're in, I don't know how many copies they would have in Denmark, or I don't know how readily available the book physically is in Denmark, but you could probably get it on Amazon pretty easily. So, so the premise behind the story is essentially a carnival comes to town. And sorry, just checking some stuff real quick. Have not heard back from my guest. Okay. All right. So maybe she'll show up. Maybe she won't. Um, a dark carnival comes to town, um, which is a very strange thing to happen in October. Well, I should say it's just a carnival. The dark part comes in later, except that it's run by a man named Mr. Dark. Um, okay. So, so with this with this carnival, they have your basic normal stuff. They've got the freak show. They've got various attractions, but the two things that really stand out are the mirror maze and the carousel, and also lots of. I Stole the One Ring is asking, are we talking about the movie or the book? I'm talking about the book. The movie and the book actually are very similar for the most part. There are certain differences between them, and I'll get into that later, but for the most part right now I'm talking about the book. Um, so you have the mirror maze and the carousel, both of which have an aura of mystery around them. And there are also very interesting people in the carnival themselves. You have the man who runs it, um, the Mr. Dark, who is also known as the Illustrated Man, who is a man who has living tattoos for the most part all over his body. Um, and it's also how he kind of communicates. Now, um, the other major character here is Will Holloway's father, Mr. Holloway. And I can't remember if he has an actual first name, but he's mostly just called Mr. Holloway. Um, and he's an older man. He is a custodian of the town's local library. And he spends a lot of time in the library, sort of living a very quiet, mundane life, and sort of feeling that his time has passed, and feeling the weight of age on him. And a lot of what this story deals with are the concept of time and age and how they work together. It's very much a coming of age story for Will and Jim, but it's also a rediscovery of your own age and how much you can do with your time for Mr. Holloway, um, because he he's not an angry man or a bitter man. I wouldn't even say he's very much a sad man. He's just somebody who has sort of accepted um, his place in the world, and it's only through the experience in this story that he begins to realize that there is more that he's capable of. And Aravandi's saying, "Stupid internet kicked me out. I had to switch laptops." Oh, you stupid internet. I'm sorry about that. Well, there's not much I can do about it, but still, I feel sorry for you. Um, so so with the characters in the carnival, the main ones that you have are Mr. Dark, the man who runs it, Mr. Cougar, who goes through a couple transformations um, throughout this story. and you have a character called the Dust Witch, who is an old fortune teller, but who also has some magical abilities as well. Charles Holloway is the father's name. You'd think I know that. And there's also, so what it really comes down to is the idea of time in this, because the main magical component of the carnival is the carousel, which is actually able to manipulate the age of the rider. If it goes forward, then the rider gets older. If it goes backwards, then the rider gets younger, and all in proportion to how long they're on the carousel. So, for instance, the first time we see that is with the character Mr. Cougar, who is Mr. Dark's partner in the carnival. And Will and Jim sneak into the carnival after hours. And I should point out that one of the first big mysteries with it is the carnival kind of appears overnight. They hear a train coming. They hear some strange sounds on the wind. They see flyers blowing through the streets of town, advertising this carnival, and then the very next day, boom, there it is. Temple is here saying, "Hi guys, I only had 4 hours of sleep last night. Nothing like being woken at 3 a.m. by a little girl who can't find her favorite stuffed animal that is right next to her in bed and having to sleep on the couch because the little boy couldn't get to sleep and wanted to sleep in his parents' bed." And that's quite a night right there. I'm sorry, Temple, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're able to make it. So, again, I apologize if I'm raspy or coughing. I'm still getting over this cold. Well, I should say I'm over the cold. It's the cough I'm not over yet. So I still sound sort of death-like, which kind of works since this is October and this is the last episode of Horror Month. So, so what else is going on with this that I have to talk about? So, with Mr. Cougar, they see him go onto the carousel, and Mr. Dark starts running it backwards. And as he does, Mr. Cougar becomes a child. And basically, Mr. Cougar is sent in as a child to sort of scope out the town. He's there to find they're all there to find people's secret desires and to grant them, because most secret desires that people have is that I wish I were older, or I wish I were younger, I wish I had more time. And so they grant that wish, but always with a caveat or a price to pay. And most of that involves the people who have those wishes granted becoming deformed in some way, and basically losing a piece of their soul, because that's what Mr. Dark is feeding on, and then they become part of the freak show. So it's very much a predatory kind of a carnival, and so what happens with Mr. Cougar is after he's gone out and he's gone scoping, he goes back, and Will and Jim now actually accidentally get involved a little bit, and as Mr. Cougar is being re-aged back up to his normal age on the carousel, they interfere. Cougar trips, gets his foot caught, and ends up staying on the carousel much, much longer than he should, and comes off as basically a desiccated mummy type character. But he's still alive, and that's the creepy part. And so what they do is, rather than try to fix him, they take this desiccated Mr. Cougar and set him up as a new attraction called Mr. Electrico. Um, uh, yeah, and with Mr. Electrico, they have him in an electric chair that they they jolt him with a bit of electricity that revives him just enough to speak. And what it looks like is this really crazy effect, and that's what they use to sort of keep the police off their back. Um, like, oh no, this is all just a creepy effect. This is not a real desiccated mummy in an electric chair. That's just crazy. But that's exactly what it is. Um, and the other character who actually plays a much more prominent role in the movie than he does in the book is a character named Tom Fury. And he's a lightning rod salesman. He's a traveling lightning rod salesman who comes to town and sells Jim a lightning rod before getting captured by the carnival. And in the book, he's basically captured by the carnival and transformed into a dwarf and becomes a part of the freak show. And the reason he gets captured is because he succumbs to this gag they have of a woman trapped in ice called the most beautiful woman in the world, and he is he's brought in by that, and they take him and they transform him into a dwarf, and he becomes a part of the freak show and a part of the carnival. And in the movie, what they do with him instead. Temple is saying, I read the book years ago and I forgot how wonderful Bradbury's descriptive skills are. They really are. It's almost poetic, the way he describes stuff. You might have missed it, but I did read the prologue for this book at the start of the show. Um, and it really is just like this wonderfully descriptive way of talking about a boy's life, descriptions of the different months, why October is so special, and then gives you this nice hook into the story with something that sounds very abstract and yet at the same time very cool, where it says, he says, but one strange, wild, dark, long year, Halloween came early. That's just a cool line. Like, you want to learn more about that. Like, what kind of Halloween came early? What are they talking about? And then the story unfolds from there. And so with Tom Fury in the movie, he is sort of taken. He's still taken by the carnival, but rather than being transformed into a dwarf, he is the one who gets strapped into an electric chair as a form of torture. Um, and the reason they're torturing him is because he is very in tune with lightning and a big storm that's coming to town, and they want to know when it's coming so that they can take advantage of it, and they're torturing him with the electric chair to try to get the information out of him. And another difference between, or not, sort of a difference is in the movie they combine the character, or they sort of transform the character of the Dust Witch into the most beautiful woman in the world, or they sort of combine the two, because the most beautiful woman in the world is pretty much there just as bait for somebody, and ultimately Tom Fury. and then she's never heard from again. Um, and so in the movie, the beautiful woman in the world comes out of the ice and sort of takes on the role of the Dust Witch from the book. Uh, I Stole the One Ring is saying, oops, apparently I read the wrong book. Well, what book did you read? Now I'm curious. Did you read Macbeth? which uh, which is where the line "Something Wicked This Way comes from." Uh, so as that goes out into the ether, um, the Dust Witch in the book is I stole the One Ring saying, "I'm not telling." Well, you can't throw that out there and then not tell us what it was. Um, so the Dust Witch, she's a fortune teller, but she also has I Stole the One Ring saying it was the same book but different author. Oh, interesting. There's a Something Wicked This Way Comes by another author. Now I need to find that out. I'll look it up later. So what was I talking about? The Dust Witch. Um, she is she's a fortune teller. She has magical abilities, and she also travels over town in a giant balloon. Um, she's a and she's sort of like the silent partner with Mr. Dark. She's sort of the muscle because she's the one who uses her abilities to silence Will and Jim, to take care of Charles as he starts putting everything together. Um, and and so yeah, I'm just reading up on her again, trying to. I read this book probably about a month ago, so I'm still sort of recapturing everything. Um, and the big weakness with Mr. Dark and the Dust Witch and pretty much everybody in the carnival is that they feed off of negative emotions, but positive emotions are like their kryptonite. Um, so, and Charles starts to figure this out. Um, when he starts learning that the people from the carnival are after Will and Jim, he goes to the library and starts doing research and speculation and basically sort of susses out exactly what they are and lays it all out for Will and Jim. And it is through that he learns that their weakness is positive emotions. And so through very, very weird circumstances, he's able to use that to his advantage. Um, the weirdest one being the way he kills the the Dust Witch, which again is extraordinarily different from the movie. With In the book, the Dust Witch captures Charles and forces him and Will to do the bullet catch trick. Um, and the bullet catch trick is essentially you take a or the way it's supposed to work is you take a gun, you put a blank in there, and then you have somebody facing the gun, and when you fire it, they flinch, and then they show that they have caught the bullet in their teeth. It's an old trick, but usually a good one at the old carnivals. In this one, what he does is he actually takes an actual bullet and then carves a picture of a smile onto the bullet and then shoots her with it, and that kills her. It's not the bullet that kills her; it's the smile on the bullet that kills her. So it's very bizarre. Um, and in the movie, like I said, they combine the Dust Witch and the most beautiful woman in the world, and the way she is taken down is since she was the bait to get Tom Fury in, and now he's stuck in this electric chair. As the storm approaches, he's able to bust out of the electric chair, grabs a lightning rod that through the chair or the storm or something has been charged with electricity, and stabs the woman with it. And that's how she meets her end in the movie. Um, I have to say that I think I kind of like the Dust Witch concept better than what they did in the movie, which was making her the most beautiful woman in the world who was trapped in ice, comes out, becomes a fortune teller for the carnival. But she's she's very like she's very smooth and not very creepy. Like the Dust Witch struck me as a much creepier type of character. Romander is saying, "Gotta go again. Have a Night Vale costume to finish before tomorrow evening." All right, good luck with that. That's a show I still have not listened to. Welcome to Night Vale. It's probably something I would enjoy, but haven't really listened to it. Um, so, um, so the big character here is Mr. Dark, um, who, like I said, he is the man who created the carnival. He's the man who runs it. Um, uh, what was Randy you were saying? Drink lots of ginger tea with lemon, with honey lemon, Josh. See you next week. Yes, right on. Ginger tea with lemon. I've been doing it. It's believe me, I sound a lot better than I did last week. You'd have thought I was dying. Um, so with Mr. Dark, he feeds on this sort of stuff. Um, he feeds on negative emotions, and he also traps the souls of people on his body in the form of the illustrations. And, oh, got a thing. It's probably her. Okay, there was a bit of a miscommunication here. Hang on just 1 second. Sorry about this. So hopefully that will get her in here. Yes, I do need to listen to Welcome to Night Vale. Excuse me. So, sorry. Quick, oh darn. Okay, so it looks like she won't be able to Skype in. She's out now. Okay. Oh well. Squirrel! As I stole the One Ring says. Okay. Um, well, so much for that idea. So, what I was, what was I talking about? Mr. Dark. Um, uh, was it Mr. Dark? Okay. Anyway, yeah. I was I don't want to talk about how Mr. Dark meets his end because that's kind of that's kind of the climax of the book. So I don't want to spoil that for anybody who hasn't read it yet. So uh, what's interesting with him is like he he is very old. One of the things that he does to preserve himself is every several years or so he'll do a couple spins on the carousel to keep himself young. And the thing that fuels the carousel are souls. And let's see, okay, they're talking about games now. Okay. Uh, so what I found what I found interesting about it was the use of positive emotions to defeat them, um, which is a very interesting way to combat evil. And I thought it was handled much better in the book than it was in the movie. Um, in the movie, he just um, it's this very harrowing scene where Will thinks that Jim is going to die, and he's devastated by it. And and Charles, his father, very angrily starts telling him that he needs to jump around and be happy and show positive emotions. And in the book, it's this very difficult struggle. And um, and in the book, it just sort of it almost seems to come out of. I'm sorry, in the movie, it seems to almost come out of nowhere. And and Charles suddenly seems like a crazy person. Um, and so I sort of felt like it wasn't handled as well in the movie. Um, but I like the idea of being able to combat these evil characters with your own positivity, and it's really it's well handled in the book. Like it. See, I stole one ring saying this is a bad time not to pay attention to the chat. I'm sitting here going, what? Yeah, they're talking about I think some Nancy Drew game in the chat, and which I haven't played, and I have no idea what they're talking about while I'm sitting here trying to talk about something wicked this way comes. So that's fun. Having two completely separate conversations going on. Um, so like I said, I like the idea of the positivity, and one of the things that I really liked was the progression of Charles Holloway and uh, and how that character sort of goes from somebody who, like I said, he's not angry, he's not bitter, he's not sad, he's just very accepting of where he is or his position in the world. He's a custodian at the library. He married at an older age. He had kids at an older age, or he had a kid at an older age. Um, um, and and he's not, like I said, he's not bitter about it or angry or sad about it. He just sort of accepts it as it is. And it's only through these experiences that he realizes that he doesn't need to accept that as much. Like he can still have a young heart, and he can still have adventure, and he can still enjoy life. Um, because one of the things that he does do, and what I love about it is one of the first scenes that we have with him is Will and Jim are running around town, and they go to the library to see Will's father, and Charles is there, and and he basically has the whole library like memorized. So he's like, well, here we have this book, and he's introducing all the books as these grand adventures to them, and it's such a fantastic scene. I never really get tired of it because he really brings you into it, and so it's interesting to see like he has this young heart, um, and he has this sensibility of adventure, but he feels that it's not for him, and so he tries to bring it to the kids, and of course they love it, um, but he also realizes that this is as much something for him as it is for the younger generation, and I think that's a very positive. That's a very wonderful concept to have right there. That you're never too old for an adventure, and that's what I love about this story. Um, so yeah, they've been talking about these Nancy Drew games in the chat. No idea. Okay, uh, I'll check that out later. It seems like they were talking about. They sound scary from what they were saying. Like there's a ghost that jumps out at you. So not really my thing. But then you know what? Um, Neither was All Creatures Great and Small, and I loved it. So so one of the things that I really like about this book overall, um, is that it really does sort of transport you back to this this different time. And like I said, it's like 1930s, very rural type of town, very small, sleepy town, and it's a very fascinating story, and it really draws you in. And like I said, that's a like we were talking before about Bradbury and how his use of description and his use of dialogue and prose, is it just it welcomes you almost into the story, like not in an overly conversational way, but just in like this very it it's almost like a hug in words, like he's just like a warm welcoming hug, if that makes any sense at all. That's the best way I could describe it. Like it it feels familiar and yet odd, and but never disconcerting. The imagery is very striking. Um, like I like the image that sticks out in my head more than anything from this book is, and it's only in the book, it's not in the movie. Is this image of the Dust Witch floating over the town in a hot air balloon contraption? Because it's just so weird, and yet it also just really works with this story. Um, and Ava's saying, "I'm really enjoying the book. I'll finish it before Halloween." Okay, cool. Um, so, and like I said, it's also very much a coming of age story for Will and Jim, because the two of them they're at that delicate age. They're both 14 years old, so you know it's like just as adolescence is starting. Um, um, but you still wanna be a kid, but you also want to be an adult, and so as it becomes clear that these two kids are sort of the focus of Mr. Dark, like he wants them for the carnival. Um, Mostly because they've seen too much. But he also knows that he can use their spirit, and um, and so they become the focus of his pursuits. Um, and so the two of them really do have to grow up in a hurry. Um, Aravandi is saying it sounds like it's very well written, but it also doesn't sound like my kind of story. I have very specific tastes in my creepy stories, I guess. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, I mean, we all have our different tastes. I mean, I'm with you. I have a Temple is saying I think Mr. Dark knows how to manipulate adults easier than he can manipulate children. I would agree with that to a certain extent, but then when he tries to manipulate Charles, Charles sees right through it all. Um, and he knows that there is something more sinister going on here. And like almost right away, like when uh, Dark goes through the town with a carnival parade at one point, primarily just looking for the kids. Like this is their search party. Um, Temple saying, I feel like this story is a combo horror story slash coming of age story. It really is. Um, Ava's saying this book has some similarities with the Night Circus. Has anyone here read that? I haven't read that one. I'd be curious to. I mean, circus stories are not really my thing, especially dark circus stories, just because they're very overdone. Um, but I felt that this one was done very masterfully. But as I was saying with Mr. Dark's manipulations, yes, for the most part, he's very good at manipulating adults. But with Charles Halloway, it's not as easy. He sees right through his ruse. He's he's very good at playing it off, and it's also through this that Charles starts to suss out Mr. Dark's weaknesses. Like, so Mr. Dark isn't able to intimidate him as much as he probably could somebody else. Um, and I think that shows like just how strong Charles is and how he really has not been giving himself enough credit for that. Um, and so it's through this experience again that Charles is able to really reassess himself and learn more about himself, and that he is this person who really is really is young at heart and very intelligent and very adventurous. And what you see is that he has a lot more in common with his son than either of them previously thought. And I really like that. I like when the two of them start to realize that towards the end of the story. Um, so, um, so I would like to talk a little bit about this version that I have, and I think most of the versions out there now have this afterword by Bradbury, where he talks sort of about the history of this story and how it sort of morphed from an idea he had as a very young writer into this story that sort of lingered in the back of his head for years, to eventually the book and all the way up to the movie. Let me just see if I can get to it. A brief afterword. That's it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that was the weird thing, and he points out like one of the first things he points out in the afterword is it may seem peculiar to some to find Gene Kelly's name on the dedication page of this book. But and he goes into how it was Gene Kelly who sort of introduced him to this this sort of otherworldly idea with some movies that he showed him, and that was sort of the genesis of this Dark Carnival, which again was something that he always admired as a kid, and apparently the gag of Mr. Electrico was something that he actually saw as a kid or as a young man. and and so, like he says, he tried for a long time to make this story, and then finally published it under Something Wicked This Way Comes, the book that we read now, and this came out in 1962. Um, and for a long time, he really tried to make it into a movie. Um, and he and it finally happened in 1983. So we're talking 20 years trying to turn his book into a movie when it finally happened uh, with the Disney movie, which I still say, like, as different as it is, and I would say in some aspects not as strong as the book. I still say it's a very good movie. If you can find it, it's not readily available on any streaming site right now. Um, um, but you can probably find it on DVD if you look hard enough. Um, I'm hoping that Disney will re-release it. Um, Temple saying, "Amazing how life influences art, things that can stick in your head and become part of your creations." Well, absolutely. Um, I would say most writers take some page from their own lives and put them into their stories, or the best stories usually have some element of that. And like, I was very fascinated by the fact that Mr. Electrico was an actual thing. Um, Probably not what it was in the book, but it was still like it was a gag where a guy was in an electric chair. He would get zapped and then he would speak. Um, but of course, it was a special effect. Uh, so yeah. Um, I can talk. Let's talk a little bit about the movie. Um, First of all, some of the people who are in it. Temple saying, "Oh, the damn Disney Vault! I hate the Disney Vault. I'm amazed they recently re-released Watcher in the Woods." I know, and I was so glad that they re-released Watcher in the Woods because that's another one of my favorite Disney horror movies. Um, and it's right up there, like in the same vein as Something Wicked. So I'm hoping that um, it will be released fairly soon too. I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm hoping it will. Some of the actors in this movie, Jonathan Pryce plays Mr. Dark, um, and this was my first exposure to him as an actor, and he scared the bejesus out of me in this movie because he was really creepy, and he was also really intense. And he was very intense, very sinister, very creepy. Like, he was a guy who his depiction of Mr. Dark was somebody who was always in control at all times. Like, even when he wasn't in control, he still looked like he was in control. Um, and it's a fantastic performance by him. Jonathan Pryce, you may know better as the goofy father from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Um, that's probably what he's more better known for these days. But back then, like, he was Mr. Dark to me. He will always be Mr. Dark to me. Um, um, and then another actor was Jason Robards, who played Charles Holloway, who I still think this was some of the most perfect casting you could ever have. Because Jason Robards really sold that role. Like, he understood that character and portrayed him perfectly as this man, like I said again, not somebody who is angry or bitter or sad about his age, just somebody who accepts it. I would say that Robards' performance probably edged a little bit more towards the sad side of it, but not so much that it was distracting or overwhelming to him. Um, yeah. So what is Arabandi saying? I wish they would just let things stay available for sale instead of locking them away. especially the kid-friendly movies, and Temple says especially the kid-friendly movies, since kids are notorious for breaking DVDs. This is very true, and I think Something Wicked is like, it's a really good like introduction to like the creepy and the horror for kids, because it's not overly scary. It definitely has scary moments in it, but just like with the book, it does this great job of drawing you into this world with the carnival that is very creepy, but yet not so much that you want to stay away. Like it's creepy and yet intriguing. The town is beautiful and idyllic, and I wish I need to do more research to find out where on earth they shot this, because it is such a beautiful town. It may be a backlot for all I know, but damn it, it's a gorgeous town. Um, oh, so Jason Robards was Charles Holloway, and I thought fantastic performance from him. Um, and then you have Temple was saying, I was thinking that too. I was very sensitive as a kid and didn't like horror movies, but I loved Something Wicked. Yeah, and I was the same way. I was very easily scared as a kid, and there were definitely moments in Something Wicked that scared me. I'm thinking particularly of The Most Beautiful Woman in the World, um, when they're interrogating Tom Fury. Um, and Will comes in and sees what's going on and screams at them to stop. And the most beautiful woman in the world turns around, and her face is superimposed with this really horrifying looking skull image, and or this decomposed corpse image. It's overlaid over her face, and it scared it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. Like, I was not expecting that. And just like Will and Jim, as soon as they saw that, they took off running, and I would have done the same thing. Um, and that's probably like the closest we see to her actually being the Dust Witch. Now, I should say, the most beautiful woman in the world / Dust Witch character is played by Pam Grier, um, which was also my first introduction to her as an actress, and for many years it was pretty much the only role I knew her as. So many years later, when I saw Foxy Brown, I was like, "That's the same person? What?" um, or when I saw her in like Escape from L.A., which is a terrible movie, uh, but she was really she was creepy in this, and she really owned that role. Um, like, and much like Mr. Dark, um, you never sense there's a moment where she feels out of control. Like, she's always in control of everything in front of her, even when she's clearly not in control. Like when Tom Fury breaks out of the electric chair and stabs her to death. She still looks like somebody who is in control of this situation as she's dying. Um, and not to spoil too much of the ending, but Mr. Dark is the same way too when his end finally comes. Um, like, you never got a sense that um, everything that was happening was not according to some sort of plan with the two of them, which is very scary and really shows like even when things are out of your control, as long as you behave as if they are still in your control, it still looks like you have the upper hand of the situation. Because like even as a kid watching this movie, I felt like the bad guys were going to win, because they always seemed a step ahead of them, even when they weren't. They always just behaved like they were. Um, and it's an interesting way to be intimidating, and I think it really works. Um, uh, Other actors in the movie, who am I forgetting? Um, the character Tom Fury, who is, like I said, much more expanded in the movie than he is in the book. Um, He's played by an actor named Royal Dano, who you may or may not know. He may be he's before a lot of our times. He is best known for playing Abraham Lincoln, um, and probably up until Daniel Day-Lewis played the part, he was probably uh, the most uh, the most celebrated actor who had played Lincoln up to that point. And he did it for a long time, doing it in movies, doing it in one-man shows, and in fact, he lent the voice to Disneyland and the Moments with Mr. Lincoln animatronic show. That's his voice as Abraham Lincoln. He plays a very different character in Something Wicked with Tom Fury, who is very much. He almost seems like a crazy person, um, especially the way he talks. Um, he he almost seems like he's a traveling salesman, but he also seems like sort of some sort of mystic. Like I can feel the storm. Ever since I was a child, I've known when storms are coming, and there's one coming to this town, and you need these lightning rods. And it's like it's clearly a sales pitch, but at the same time, you sort of wonder, does he have some sort of sense of this? And clearly, Mr. Dark and everybody thinks that he does because they capture him and they torture him to try to get information about the upcoming storm from him. Um, but I mean, Tom never spills the beans, which also says to me maybe he was bluffing, and or he's just really really strong. Again, that's not something that's really is never really revealed. Uh, Aside from like when the lightning storm finally does come, he breaks out and sort of takes control. But as soon as he kills the most beautiful woman in the world, or the Dust Witch, he pretty much runs off and is never heard from again. Um, in the book, he's transformed into this dwarf who um, who has this very strong loyalty to the carnival after his transformation. And without spoiling too much, he's one of the few characters who, after Dark, after Dark's hold over all of them are lifted, and they all run to, um, they all go back to their old lives and escape the carnival. He stays behind, and um, I, and I don't want to say more than that, but he stays behind. So like there actually is like this innate sense of loyalty in him to the carnival, um, that goes beyond just whatever spell they have over him. Um, but again, it's not really explained um, why that is. Um, Tom Fury is a bit of a mystery in both the movie and the book, but in very different ways. Um, but I liked Royal Dano's performance of him uh, because he's this mystical guy. He seems like a homeless man. He seems like a crazy person, but at the same time, there's there's something more to him. Like you sort of feel like he really is in on something. Um, but but again, that's not really revealed. Um, so Ava's saying, I've never seen or known about the movie. I'll try to find it after finishing the book. If you can, that would be great. I think you'd really enjoy it. Um, I I believe that it is still available on DVD. Like you can order it online. It's probably like less than $10, but there's been no like major re-release of it. Um, and it's also not available on any streaming sites, unfortunately. Believe me, I looked. I wanted to watch this movie again. So that's about all I can think of to talk about with Something Wicked This Way Comes. It's still it really holds up after all this time. I think it's a fantastic Halloween book. It's a fantastic read. Um, I hope that those of you who did read it did enjoy it. So this brings us to an end with Horror Month. I'm gonna start to bring us to a close now because it's just me. Um, so so next month we're gonna keep the theme a little bit open. Next month, of course, is National Novel Writing Month, and I'm gonna kind of use this as an excuse to really get on rewriting my book, Ben. Uh, so we'll be focusing a lot on writing and creativity and that sort of thing. So that should be interesting. It should be noted that this show is now a year old. We're not really doing much to celebrate it, but yeah, the Torn Book Club is now a year old. Um, and most of you who are in the chat, a number of you have been here since the beginning, so I thank you for that. Um, Ava's saying maybe we could someday do an international month. That's a great idea. I would love to do an international month. Um, like many themes to choose from as we go forward, and I mean it's very difficult for me to constantly try to come up with new ideas for the show week after week after week. Um, I'm trying to implement some changes that will probably take place in January. Um, Ava's saying read books written by writers that are not American or British. Absolutely. I would absolutely love to do that. If you have any good recommendations, Ava, please send them my way. Um, Speaking of which, the book of the month for November is a suggestion from one of our members here. Um, I don't really have a graphic for it yet, but I'll let you know now so that you're ready. It is. Let me bring it up here. I have been listening to it, so I just have to remember the author's name. Okay, so the book the book for November is going to be The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. And this was recommended to me by Temple. Um, and I'm a little more than halfway through it now, and I really like it. This was a good recommendation. So next month, we're going to be talking about writing, the writing process, world building, character creation. I may not do a show every week because, of course, we're going to have. Yes, I stole the One Ring saying, who recommended it? Come on, spill it. Temple recommended it. And it was a good recommendation. Aravani says, who's the author? The author's name is, I have to bring it up because I still don't remember, is Robin McKinley. And next month I'll have a graphic for it and everything, so we'll be able to see it. Temple saying it may be hard to find an ebook version. I've found an audiobook version of it quite easily, so ebook you could probably find very easily too. But I'll look into that and see where you can find it. Yeah, since next month is also Thanksgiving, I'm going to be out of town for at least one weekend, but I may do an episode from wherever I am, another on location episode, because those are usually pretty fun. But for now, we might I may not do one every week, just because it's really hard to keep up with this. Uh, but I'll do my best. But starting probably in January, I'm going to begin changing. I'm going to begin changing the format of the show to something that's a little bit more manageable. Um, but I'll let you know as that starts to happen. Um, so thank you all for what I consider to be a very fun horror month. You may not have, I don't know, um, but for since we are now officially done with horror month, let's bring back the color. Look at this. Look at all these wonderful things I can do. Okay, I think I need to play with that some more. Okay. So, there we go. And so we are back into color. So, so I will see you all next week, um, and we'll make the official announcement for the Blue Sword on the Facebook page at the first of the month. But this is your little heads up. And so, thank you all again for a wonderful year, a fun horror month. I'm glad that you are all still here and still enjoying the show and not annoyed by me too much yet. uh, Ava saying horror month was great. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you did. I'm glad that I wasn't the only one just sitting here having a good time with all this horror stuff. um, so I will see you all next week. And Temple saying thanks for the discussion of something wicked. I liked reading it again. I did too. I really enjoyed reading this book again. In fact, I might read it more regularly from now on. Um, so, yeah. So, thank you all. I will see you next week and never stop reading.